Welcome back to our channel. Sunflower. Today's emotional story follows Hana, a gentle girl caught between the sincere love of two good men, Tuan and Thomat. Both of them care deeply for her, protect her, and stand beside her during the hardest moments of her life. But as their feelings grow stronger, Hana finds herself trapped in a painful situation. She doesn't want to hurt either man, and more than anything, she fears losing the beautiful friendship they built together. From emotional confessions on a rainy night to a heartfelt meeting in a sunflower field, this story is filled with love, sacrifice, and difficult choices. Will Hana finally discover who truly holds her heart? Or will all three of them lose each other because of love? Watch until the end to experience every emotional moment of this touching story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel and enjoy more heartfelt romantic dramas every day. Hana never expected her quiet life to become so complicated. For a long time, she had lived alone in her small countryside house, trying to survive after many painful experiences in the past. She worked hard every day, growing vegetables, feeding chickens, and repairing old furniture with her own hands. Even though life was difficult, Hana always tried to smile and stay strong. Then, unexpectedly, two men entered her life and slowly changed everything. Tuan was the first person who made Hana feel safe again. He was a kind and hardworking young man who often helped neighbors without asking for anything in return. The first time Hana met him, he was repairing the broken fence outside her house after a heavy storm had destroyed it. From that day on, Tuan continued appearing in her life in the gentlest ways. Sometimes he brought fresh vegetables from his farm. Other times, he quietly fixed things around her house while pretending it was no big deal. Hana noticed that whenever she looked tired, Tuan would find an excuse to make her laugh. His warm smile and calm personality slowly became a source of comfort she depended on more than she wanted to admit. Not long after that, Thomat appeared in Hana's life. Unlike Tuan, Thomat was confident, mature, and full of energy. He had traveled to many places and often told Hana exciting stories about the world outside the countryside. He encouraged her to stop doubting herself and reminded her that she deserved happiness just like everyone else. Thomat admired Hana's strength and independence. Whenever she faced difficulties, he was always there to motivate her and push her forward. If Tuan gave Hana peace, Thomat gave her courage. As the weeks passed, Hana realized both men were becoming more important to her every day. Tuan would silently wait outside her house during rainy evenings just to make sure she was safe. Thomat would surprise her with small gifts and encourage her to dream about a better future. Each of them cared for her sincerely in their own way, and Hana could feel the honesty in their actions. However, the more kindness she received, the more confused her heart became. Hana began noticing the subtle tension between Tuan and Thomat whenever they were together. Though both remained polite, there was an invisible competition growing between them. They both wanted to be the one standing closest to Hana. She could see it in the way Tuan quietly looked disappointed whenever Thomat made her laugh, and in the way Thomat became silent whenever Hana praised Tuan. One evening, Hana sat alone outside her house, staring at the sunset while her thoughts overwhelmed her. She cared deeply for both men, but she was terrified of making the wrong choice. The idea of choosing one person felt like hurting the other. More than anything, Hana feared losing the beautiful friendship they had built together. She knew both Tuan and Thomat were good men with sincere hearts, and she could not bear the thought of seeing either of them walk away because of her decision. For the first time in a long while, Hana realized love was not simple. It was not just about happiness or romance. Sometimes, love could place someone in the middle of impossible emotions, where every choice carried the risk of heartbreak. and as the cold evening wind brushed across her face, Hana silently wondered how long she could continue hiding her true feelings before everything changed forever. The rain began falling heavily just before sunset, covering the small countryside road in mud and cold wind. Inside her little house, Hana lay under a thin blanket, weak from a fever that had been getting worse since morning. She had spent the entire day alone, too exhausted to cook or even stand for long. Although she tried to convince herself she would recover by tomorrow, deep down she wished someone would knock on her door and remind her she was not alone. A sudden sound outside made her slowly sit up. When Hana opened the door, she was surprised to see Tuan standing there, completely soaked from the rain. In one hand, he carried a bag of medicine, and in the other, a container of warm soup he had cooked himself. His worried eyes immediately softened when he saw her pale face. "You should be resting," Tuan said gently as he stepped inside. "I knew something was wrong when you didn't answer my messages." Hana smiled weakly, touched by his kindness. Before she could thank him properly, another knock suddenly echoed through the house. Tuan turned toward the door, confused. Hana slowly opened it again, only to freeze in shock. Thomat stood there holding an umbrella and several bags of groceries. For a brief moment, the world seemed completely silent. Rain continued pouring outside while the two men stared at each other in surprise. Neither of them expected the other to be there. Hana instantly felt her heart tighten with panic. "I heard Hana was sick," Thomat finally said calmly, though his eyes briefly shifted toward Tuan. "So I came to check on her." Tuan nodded politely, but the tension between them was impossible to ignore. Hana quickly invited Thomat inside, hoping to ease the awkward atmosphere before it became worse. Soon, the three of them sat together around the small wooden table while the storm raged outside. At first, they spoke normally. Tuan poured warm soup into Hana's bowl while Thomat carefully prepared her medicine and reminded her to eat slowly. Both men were trying their best to care for her, yet Hana could feel the silent competition growing stronger every minute. Every small action carried hidden emotions neither man could fully hide anymore. The atmosphere became even heavier when Thomat suddenly looked directly at Hana and spoke honestly. "Hana," he said quietly, "I don't think I can keep pretending anymore. I love you." Hana's hands froze instantly. Her heartbeat became so loud she could barely breathe. Across the table, Tuan lowered his eyes in silence, his expression filled with pain he tried hard to hide. After several long seconds, he finally spoke too. "I feel the same way," Tuan admitted softly. "I've loved Hana for a long time." The room fell completely silent except for the sound of rain hitting the roof. Hana looked at both men, overwhelmed by emotion. Seeing the sincerity in their eyes only made her chest ache more painfully. Tears slowly filled her eyes before she finally broke down crying. "I don't want to hurt either of you," she whispered through tears. "You both mean so much to me. I never wanted things to become like this." Tuan clenched his hands quietly while Thomat looked at Hana with deep sadness. For the first time, both men realized how much pressure Hana had been carrying alone. She was not playing with their feelings or avoiding the truth out of selfishness. She was simply terrified of losing the people she cared about most. That rainy night changed everything between them. The feelings that had remained hidden for so long were finally spoken aloud, and none of them could pretend anymore. As the storm continued outside, the small house felt heavier than ever, filled with love, the fear, and the painful uncertainty of what would happen next. For several days after the rainy evening, Hana avoided both Tuan and Thomat. She stopped answering their messages and spent most of her time alone, hoping the silence would help clear her confused heart. But instead of finding peace, she only felt emptier with each passing day. The small countryside house that once felt warm and comforting now seemed painfully quiet. Every corner reminded her of them: the wooden fence Tuan repaired with his own hands, the flowers Thomat brought to brighten her garden, the laughter they once shared together. Hana realized she could not continue running away forever. The longer she stayed silent, the more everyone would suffer. She cared deeply for both men, and pretending nothing had changed would only create more pain. After many sleepless nights, Hana finally made a decision. She sent a message asking Tuan and Thomat to meet her at the sunflower field outside the village, the special place where the three of them had once spent an unforgettable afternoon together. That evening, golden sunlight covered the endless field of sunflowers as the wind moved gently through the bright yellow petals. Hana stood quietly in the middle of the field, nervously holding her hands together while waiting for them to arrive. When Tuan and Thomat finally appeared from opposite sides of the road, the atmosphere immediately became tense again. Neither man spoke at first, but both could see the sadness and exhaustion in Hana's eyes. For a moment, Hana struggled to find the courage to speak. Then, taking a deep breath, she finally looked at both of them with trembling eyes. "I asked you here because I don't want us to keep hurting each other," she said softly. "These past few days made me realize how important both of you are to me." Tuan listened quietly while Thomat remained completely still, waiting for her next words. Hana lowered her eyes before continuing. "I know both of you love me sincerely. And honestly, I care deeply about both of you too. That's why this has been so painful for me." Tears slowly filled her eyes again. "But I don't want to choose someone just because I'm afraid of hurting the other person. If I make a decision now without understanding my own heart completely, all three of us may regret it forever." The evening wind blew softly around them as silence filled the sunflower field. Hana's voice shook as she continued speaking from the heart. "What scares me most isn't choosing one person," she admitted. "It's losing the friendship and memories we've shared together. I don't want love to turn us into strangers." For several long seconds, neither Tuan nor Thomat said anything. Hana felt her chest tighten painfully as she waited for their reactions. She feared disappointment, anger, or even goodbye. But instead, something unexpected happened. Tuan slowly smiled, though sadness remained visible in his eyes. "Hana," he said gently, "I fell in love with you because of your kindness. I could never hate you for being honest about your feelings." A moment later, Thomat also nodded quietly. "I don't want to pressure you either," he admitted. "If your happiness means waiting, then I'm willing to wait." Hana stared at them in shock before tears finally rolled down her cheeks. At that moment, she realized how rare it was to meet people who truly respected her heart instead of forcing her to choose for their own selfish desires. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains, the three of them stood together among the endless sunflowers, carrying uncertain futures but also a silent promise: no matter what happened next, they would protect the bond they had built together instead of allowing love to destroy it.